Hello, metalheads of the internet! Welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. I'm doing great. How are you? That's wonderful. Shut up for a minute. Today, by semi-popular demand, we will be reviewing every single full-length studio album from Finnish symphonic metal power metal crew Nightwish.
Oh, hell no, Mr. Meltdown. I don't buy this for a single second. You're telling me this many people genuinely want to talk about some symphonic pussy poser pop metal garbage like Nightwish? Give me a break. I demand a recount.
Okay, sure. Screw it. Why not? 59% of the Metal Meltdown audience said, yeah, go for it. Review every Nightwish album. 41% said, no, please don't do that, I'm not into that. Here's the thing, 59 is a bigger number than 41, and therefore, Thrash and Jackson, obviously, the results of the polls shows that...
It means the election was rigged!
Oh, sweet Kentucky Fried Fuck, not this again.
That's right! Rigged by pussy posers and twinks and a bunch of stupid Finnish socialists.
Yeah, that's awesome, Thrash and Jackson. Here's the thing, though. I don't give a shit. Chompy! Get his ass out of here! He's done!
Oh, I'm not going anywhere, Mr. Meltdown. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. Oh God! Okay, alright, you win! I'm going! Okay, jeez, oh God!
Okay, so, as per the norm with videos of this type and style and variety, I am not interested in EPs, demos, live albums, or compilations. I am interested only in full-length studio albums. I will be talking about each album in order of release, and assigning each a score out of 5, 0 obviously being the worst, and 5 obviously being the best. And just a quick note, if you're hoping to hear my thoughts and feelings on the new Nightwish album, Yesterwind, also in this video, too bad. You will have to wait for a full-blown album review sometime later in the week, or maybe even at the beginning of next week, because I don't have a review ready, I haven't heard the album, it's hard for me to comment on something that I haven't experienced in any capacity, so tough titties, you'll just have to wait. Let's begin. First up, we have Angels Fall First, released in November 1997 via Spinefarm Records, and we are not off to a great start, not in my opinion at least. Now, in Nightwish's defense, this was never intended to be the debut Nightwish full-length album. From what I understand, this was something they had put together to just kind of like sell themselves to a record label. This was a demo that they had sent out to record companies and to labels to say, hey, sign us. And then Spinefarm heard it, signed Nightwish, and said, you know what, this shit is so good, we don't need to add anything. We don't need to polish this, we don't need to refine this, we don't need to remix or remaster anything, we don't need to enhance the riffs or the drums or whatever, we don't need to clean things up. This is perfect, let's just put it out in its exact state right now, and that is exactly what they did. And that is not what I would have done. This is an album that, in my opinion, is in desperate need of some spit shine and polish and elbow grease. I mean, don't get me wrong, it sounds pretty decent for a demo, I guess, but the songs themselves aren't that strong and would really benefit from some more full-bodied production, like some bigger guitars, some bigger drums. It would benefit from some, like, cleaner vocal tones as well, some better executed harmonies and such as well. Like, it just sounds kind of off in certain points. Everyone's doing their best. It's their first album, I get it, but also, again, it isn't technically an album. It was just a demo. There's a lot that could have been done here, and it just wasn't because Spinefarm wanted to get it out as quickly as possible. Now, that said, I will also say that even with a more bubbly, glossy, professional production and sound mix, I'm not really sure this album would still be doing a ton for me. I'm not really sure that I'd be suddenly super into it if it were bigger and better and louder. Because the songs themselves just don't really do that much. This is Nightwish at their most primitive and their most basic in terms of their songwriting and songcraft. Pretty standard kind of heavy metal, power metal stuff all the way through, with some acoustic kind of folksy sections and some, you know, kind of operatic runs here and there. Tarja's vocal is not like fully developed there. I don't know if she's holding back intentionally or if she's just not at that point yet, but, you know, irregardless, not great overall. Vocal harmonies especially are not strong. There's a couple sections specifically in The Carpenter where you have these dual vocals and these harmonies, and it honestly just sounds kind of ugly. Like, it just sounds like really bad kind of like Wednesday night dramatic karaoke or whatever the fuck. I'm feeling a very strong 2 out of 5. It's mediocre. This should not have been released in this state. There's a lot more that could have been done in terms of the production, in terms of the songwriting and songcraft. I mean, Spine Farm, love that you have that confidence. And again, in retrospect, maybe you were right to have that confidence. But next time, a weekend in the studio would have made a world of difference, because this just ain't that great for me. I mean, honestly, I'm tempted right now to say this is my least favorite Nightwish album. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how I feel when we start to get through the others and when we start to talk about them. But right now, I would say this is my least favorite Nightwish album. Next up, we have Oceanborn, released in December 1998, once again via Spine Farm Records, just slightly over a year later. I guess in a way you can look at this as like the official For Realsies debut album, because Angels Fall First was technically a demo that had been marketed as an album, but whatever, we're not going to play that game today. We're just going to talk about the album, and I will say this right off the bat. Oceanborn, massive improvement. Massive improvement. It's literally night and day. In an interview with Kerrang! Back in 2008, Tuomas Halapinen kind of talked about how Angels Fall First was never supposed to be the debut album, and because of that, they felt they really had to put like 110% into Oceanborn. Like, they really had to push themselves. Saying specifically, we were all such amateurs when it came to recording. We didn't really know what we were doing, so we were just experimenting with a lot of different things. We even brought in the string trio who were complete shit, then another violin on top, so we ended up with Moondance having 20 tracks of violin just because we hadn't done this before and didn't know what we were doing. It's a pretty stuffed album, but I also think it's one of our best because you can hear the excitement of trying all these new things. And I mean, yeah, he's right. You can feel and see and hear the excitement all throughout the album, through all the different flute arrangements, woodwinds, strings, pianos, synthesizers, Tarja's bigger and more dynamic and more bold kind of operatic range. She is flexing her vocal muscles big time across this thing. The riffs are better, the melodies are better, everything is just stronger, heavier, prettier, better balanced, better produced. The album has plenty of melodrama and bombast, but never feels overwhelming. The album is elegant, but it never feels really schmaltzy. It's a genuinely well-crafted, produced and written kind of symphonic, power metal, heavy metal record. Like, I feel like this is how a lot of symphonic metal bands should be making music. The aforementioned Moondance is stirring and lush and evocative. Like, I love hearing those strings swell, and I love hearing that really, like, sad kind of bittersweet piano and hearing the woodwinds kind of cut through it like some kind of symphonic metal Jethro Tull-ass bullshit. Then there's Devil in the Deep Dark Ocean, which has some heavier kind of metallic chugs and rhythms and grooves to it, with some kind of like demonic, evil kind of harpsichord organ work. And then there's Passion of the Opera, which manages to create some pretty emotionally charged, cathartic kind of interplay between these operatic vocal dynamics, courtesy of Tarja, killing it, flexing that vocal muscle, and also some more standard kind of heavy metal, power metal, neoclassical kind of pyrotechnics. Walking in the Air is a great album closer. It's big and bold, but simultaneous to that, it feels really tender and sweet and kind of intimate. And, you know, on the flip side, Stargazers is an excellent opening number filled with soaring guitars and plenty of, like, full-on classic metal, power metal, bombast, and pyrotechnics. I'm feeling a very strong 4 out of 5, leaning very heavily towards a 4.5 out of 5, a massive improvement in every single capacity and regard. It's Nightwish becoming Nightwish. It's an excellent record. If you know Nightwish, then there's a good chance you know of this record, but if you somehow don't, I would recommend you change that immediately. Next up, we have Wishmaster, released in May 2000, once again via Spine Farm Records. An interesting addition to the Nightwish discography because, I mean, a lot of power metal, symphonic metal, heavy metal bands are always inspired by fantasy literature. This album is no exception. Heavy influence from The Lord of the Rings, Dragonlance, even Disney animated movies. The difference here is that I feel like Nightwish are really trying to create and insert you and immerse you into this heavily fantastical world. Like, they're trying to put you into their own fantasy world through this album. And they're doing so by putting a heavier emphasis on atmospheric elements. Like, it's not as heavy, though it does still have some of the bombastic tendencies and energies of Oceanborn. Tarja is also front and center. Everything is a little bit more complementary to her vocal style. Like, it kind of feels like they're crafting music around her vocals. And all of this genuinely does make for, I would say, a more immersive and dreamy experience than that of Oceanborn. I would say I do prefer Oceanborn still overall because I think the songs are just better, they're more immediate, they're more dynamic and robust, but Wishmaster is doing a lot of really cool things, and I really respect a lot of what this album tries to do and also what it actually does do. You've got stuff like Two for Tragedy and Dead Boy's Poem, which have darker subject matter, more melancholic, more miserable. It's very cinematic, a lot of emotion and heart and soul here. Love Tarja's vocals, love all the different keyboard and string arrangements here as well. It does a great job at feeling really big without being overwhelming. Wanderlust and the title track Wishmaster, bringing in more of those power metal flavors, more neoclassical guitars, more shredding, more big operatic choruses. Now, I do have some issues. For one, I would say that Phantasmic is a little bit too over the top and bordering on cheesy as well, pulling heavy influence from Disney animated movies. I would also say that the Kinslayer sticks out like a sore thumb and actively derails the concept, the tone, and the atmosphere of this record. And that is because it is an upbeat, triumphant, synth-driven anthem that is apparently inspired by the Columbine Massacre. And, yeah, just saying that out loud doesn't even feel real. I just listened to it, and I can't believe that it's real. For one, I don't know why you would spend so much time, like, creating this fantasy world for people to live in, for people to explore sonically, and then suck them back into such harsh reality like that with a song like Kinslayer, and then simultaneous to that, have a song about such a real tragedy, such a real horrible tragedy, be such an upbeat, triumphant, synth-driven anthem. Like, what were you thinking? I am not understanding the logic here whatsoever, and if it were up to me, I would remove this song from the album and maybe also from existence. Maybe. I would. That aside, I still enjoyed a vast majority of the album. I like a lot of what Nightwish is trying to do here, and I think they mostly succeed at doing it. I'm feeling a pretty solid 3.5 out of 5. For me, I'm going back to Oceanborn, but a lot of people love Wishmaster. Loudwire also called this one of the best power metal albums of all time. I can understand why people would have that mindset, even if it's not like my particular cup of tea. Next up, we have Century Child, released in May 2002, once again via Spinefarm Records. I feel like this is a combination of the best and the most accessible elements of Oceanborn and Wishmaster. Because it's not as hectic, it's not as bombastic, but it is still quite lush and elegant and melodramatic. In fact, Nightwish actually employing a full-blown orchestra on this album as well. Tarja's vocals are still very much front and center, and a lot of the music is kind of crafted around her, kind of crafted to complement her vocals, but also everyone else gets a little bit more to do, generally speaking. Like, it does feel like there's a lot more unity and cohesion in that sense. It does feel like we're actively working to make things more refined, and we're actively working to make things more accessible. I think in that regard, you can argue that this is like Nightwish's version of like the Black Album, you know? Like, it's just everything they've learned, everything they've done, kind of like brought down to earth, but also emboldened and expanded upon. And I think it makes for a very strong record. It's more consistent all the way through than Wishmaster. It taps into those vibes and energies that I love so much from Oceanborn without being like super fucking crazy over the top. Ocean Soul, Ever Dream, Dead to the World, all great cuts. Love their version of Phantom of the Opera, honestly. Like, that's actually very well done. When I saw this in the track listing, I honestly thought it was a cover of the Iron Maiden song Phantom of the Opera, but no, it's actually the Phantom of the Opera from the Phantom of the Opera show and musical, and it's very well done. The 10-minute symphonic power prog opus that is Beauty of the Beast as well is honestly fantastic. I would say probably the best thing on this record, and one of the best things from this early age of Nightwish. The production is so clean and pretty and glossy. Everything shines and dazzles and sparkles, but guitars and drums still have enough of that like metallic heft to really kind of like drive through and push through and to really make you kind of like feel everything. Having an actual orchestra there too is wonderful. I mean, you really get to hear all those horns, all those woodwinds, all those keyboards, and it feels so organic and it's massive and beautiful. I'm feeling a very strong 4 out of 5, leaning towards a 4.5 out of 5. Maybe not as ambitious as the last couple of records, but again, I think it overcomes that by combining the best elements of those albums and making it more accessible, refining it, polishing it, bringing it down to earth, making it a little bit more grounded. And for that reason, if somebody asked me, hey, I want to get into Nightwish, what album should I start with? I think this is actually the album I would recommend, honest to fucking God. Next up, we have Once, released in June 2004 via Spinefarm, Roadrunner, and Nuclear Blast Records. Damn, everyone wanted a slice of the Nightwish pie. Which, I mean, makes sense. I mean, by this point, Nightwish is selling tons and tons of records, the biggest name in symphonic metal, power metal. They have legitimate mainstream commercial success. They're packing stadiums, touring the fucking world. Who would not want a slice of that pie? Totally valid, I get it. The irony, though, being that this particular pie from Nightwish is not super flavorful. I mean, it's not terrible, but I've definitely had way better, specifically from this band already. With Once, Nightwish is continuing to refine and streamline their sound, in the process making it more accessible, more mainstream, really stripping away the most hectic, the most dynamic, the most crazy-ass elements of the sound. Like, this is very strictly a symphonic heavy metal record. The power metal stuff is gone. A lot of the crazy fantastical elements are also kind of gone. The melodies and hooks don't pop and sizzle and soar as high or as bright. And honestly, I feel like Tarja's kind of holding back vocally as well. I mean, she's still great, don't get me wrong, but she's not really belting it out the same way she was on Century Child and Wishmaster and Oceanborn. And the few creative detours that do exist on this album are really poorly implemented, in my opinion. The best example being I Wish I Had an Angel, which for the most part is a fairly decent, nice, warm kind of symphonic metal song. Like, my mom would probably listen to it and be like, that's nice, that's pretty. And then, like, within, like, the final third, we have this switch, this really heavy kind of, like, synthesized drum beat and some heavier guitars. And I don't know, it just kind of feels like I'm listening to a Rammstein song all of a sudden. Like, it just doesn't mesh very well. There are at least a couple of songs like Creek Mary's Blood and Ghost Love Score that do give me more of that adventurous, elegant, free-spirited symphonic metal songcraft that I want from Nightwish. It's just that everything else in between just isn't really doing it, and it kind of feels like Nightwish is kind of running on fumes with this one. I'm feeling a 2.5 out of 5, I guess, maybe leaning slightly towards a 3 with some of those bigger songs, but yeah, overall it's just kind of okay, not my thing. A solid step down, I would say. Next up, we have Dark Passion Play, released in September 2007, once again via Spinefarm, Nuclear Blast, and Roadrunner Records. This record is fascinating, not so much because of the music, more so because of everything that kind of happened behind the scenes. This was an incredibly expensive record to put together, recorded in studios all over the world with tons of different musicians. Tarja is out of the band, Annette Olsen is in, and Tuomas Halopainen is on record as saying that this album saved his life. That's crazy, that's a lot, but is the album any good? Sure, I guess. I don't know. Meh. I don't know, man. I feel like this album is just so obsessed with being so big, so grand, so bombastic, that the music just kind of gets lost in the chaos and madness of everything. It kind of reminds me of, like, Chinese Democracy in that sense, and also to a certain extent of, like, crazy-ass symphonic power metal from, like, Rhapsody of Fire and shit like that. Like, it's just too much for its own good. And yes, let's address the elephant in the room. Annette was the wrong choice to replace Tarja. Period. Plain and simple. Not up for debate. She's not a bad singer per se. I could totally picture her singing in a more basic kind of pop or rock band and frankly killing it, but she is the wrong choice for this kind of band. Now, granted, replacing an iconic singer is always difficult, but there are bands that have made it work. There are bands that have continued to enjoy critical and commercial success with different singers in place of their most iconic singers. But the thing is, a band like Nightwish is not going to adapt to Annette's vocal stylings. And a singer like Annette is not strong enough as a vocalist to adapt to Nightwish's operatic symphonic power metal. She just isn't. No disrespect to her. She was just very simply the wrong choice. Now, I do still think there's some pretty cool stuff here. For instance, the super heavy folk influence on The Islander and Last of the Wilds. Master Passion Greed is also kind of a fun, cheesy, goofy, kind of dark heavy metal cut. And you know, even if Annette isn't on the same level vocally as Tarja, she does kind of hold her own and put in some decent performances on cuts like For the Heart I Once Had and Whoever Brings the Night. It's definitely a hot mess. It's definitely too big for its own good, a little bit pretentious, a little bit over the top. But I mean, it's got some decent bright spots here and there. It's not a complete waste of time and talent and money, just like a mild one, you know? I would say the record is mostly just kind of okay, you know, warts and all. And with that in mind, obviously 2.5 out of 5, it's okay. Maybe I'd pick this over once. I don't know. It is definitely more unique, I guess. But I mean, it's still not great. I don't know. Whatever. Who cares? The diehard Nightwish fans will be able to pick some meat off this fucking carcass. Good for them. I'd like to move on. Next up, we have Imaginarium, released in November 2011 via C Nation, Nuclear Blast Records, and Roadrunner Records. This is a concept album about a composer reminiscing on his life and his legacy while on his deathbed, and fun fact, apparently this was produced alongside a movie called Imaginarium, and it kind of became its companion piece in a way, with both the movie and the album sharing similar themes and ideas, and even sharing music. That's kind of cool. That's kind of fun. I kind of want to check out the movie now. I'm intrigued. Now, obviously, because I haven't seen the movie, because I wasn't aware of it until like 5 minutes ago, I can't tell you how exactly this album plays into that movie, if at all. What I can tell you is that this is significantly more focused, better produced, and just better executed than Dark Passion Play. Right off the bat, you can tell Annette is a lot more comfortable on this album. She's actually sounding really fucking good pretty consistently across this thing. I stand by my claim that she was the wrong choice to replace Tarja, but to her credit, she's kinda killing it on this thing. It's nice to see Nightwish bringing back elements from some of their earlier records as well. They're a little heavier in some parts. We're going into more fantastical area. There's more synthesizers, strings, flutes. It's more over the top and hectic, but in a way that makes sense and that still feels manageable. It's not the pretentious garble that was Dark Passion Play. And it also still has that streamlined sound and feel of something like Century Child. In fact, some pretty strong, almost poppy choruses and hooks across this whole thing. You've got a track like Storytime, which has some really strong melodies through and through, like it's catchy, it's fun. It has this triumphant, dark, kind of heavy feel and tone to it as well, emboldened later on by some really nice epic choral vocal work. Then there's Slow Love Slow, a very tender, spacious, brutal ballad with beautiful horn work and some nice weeping vocals from Annette. Love seeing that really warm, rustic, folksy sound and influence come back in through the crow, the owl, and the dove as well. And I Want My Tears Back too. Like, that kind of feels like vintage Nightwish in a way, just with Annette on vocals instead. Now, I will argue that the album is far too long for its own good, with the standard edition clocking in at nearly 75 minutes long, but overall, the vast majority of those 75 minutes is pretty fucking good. So I'm going with a 3.5 out of 5. Is pretty fucking good. What can I say? I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of interested to check out this Imaginarium movie, honestly, see how it ties into the album, if at all. I don't know, Metal Meltdown movie review in the future, I don't fucking know. Next up, we have Endless Form's Most Beautiful, released in March 2015 via Nuclear Blast Records. Annette is gone. Nightwish have kicked her out, and they've grabbed the baton/microphone, and they've passed it on to Floor Jansen. Right off the bat, a much more suitable fit for the band. No disrespect, Annette, you did your best, you really truly did, but this is for the best. I feel like in some ways, too, this album is a bit of a creative reboot for the band. Like, they're definitely building off of the successes and momentum of the previous couple of records, but they're also continuing to kind of look back on Oceanborn and Wishmaster and Century Child. And that kind of results in a lot of different ideas and concepts kind of taking shape and taking form on this album, making for something that feels quintessentially very Nightwish. Like, it is a really big, bold, and dynamic and robust record. Thunderous even, especially when Floor really starts fucking screaming and fucking singing. Like, she's got a hell of a fucking set of pipes on her. You've got Shudder Before the Beautiful, which fully embraces more power metal heft and pyrotechnics and some roaring vocals. You've got Elen, which blends some more of that rustic, warm, folksy influence with some classic tones and that kind of, like, elegant sound I would expect from Nightwish on Oceanborn back in the day. Yours is an Empty Hope is a massive song with brassy horns and swelling strings, and it's quite powerful and very in your face. And then there's The Greatest Show on Earth, which is where Nightwish just goes completely batshit bonkers and fucking insane in the best way possible. This is a 24-minute song, and it is cram-packed with imaginative, cinematic, immersive, emotional, dynamic songcraft and songwriting. I feel like Nightwish could have released this entire song as a standalone EP, and it would have made for an amazing listen. Like, it's that strong by itself. Now, I will say, at this point, Nightwish have a habit of making albums that are well over and nearing an hour and a half long. And, you know, the last one was 75 minutes, and so is this one. And that's a lot, and maybe for that reason, The Greatest Show on Earth should have literally been its own standalone EP. But much like with Imaginarium, I mean, the vast majority of what's here is really, really good. And I would actually argue this is better than Imaginarium. It's heavier, it's bigger, it's bolder. It's more of what people really want from Nightwish, but with a lot of, like, different elements that Nightwish was still playing around with on the last couple of records. Like I said, it feels like Nightwish is quintessentially Nightwish again. For me, I think this is a 4 out of 5. I think they honestly kind of killed it on this record. I was honestly refreshed and surprised by this album too, like by how good it was, because, I mean, I don't think I'd listened to it since it came out, and back then I was definitely not a Nightwish fan. So it's nice to come back to this and be like, wow, this actually is a lot better than I remember. They're kind of killing it here. And finally, this brings us to Human to Nature, released in April 2020 via Nuclear Blast Records. At the time of its release, this was a slightly divisive and controversial record, not so much because of like some crazy shit that happened. I think Nightwish fans were just kind of like split on how they felt about Nightwish at this point in time. And I can definitely understand why. It's not as if Nightwish had a super stellar slate of releases after Tarja's departure, but counterpoint, not everything they made with her was like godly and amazing too, at least not in my opinion, so whatever. The point is, not everybody was fucking with this thing at the time, and I can definitely understand why. This definitely reaches Dark Passion Play levels of like super over-the-top, pretentious, crazy nonsense. Like, there's a lot going on. There's so much happening conceptually, musically, and on top of that, this is Nightwish's biggest album. This is 81 minutes long, and it fucking does not need to be. I don't care what anyone says. There's no need for any album to be this fucking long. But that being said, I can't deny there's some pretty good music on here. I feel like this is Nightwish just once again being quintessentially Nightwish, pulling from their classic records, and also bringing in more of those theatrical, bombastic, crazy elements from Dark Passion Play and Imaginarium, expanding on what they did with Endless Forms Most Beautiful, and just creating like this absolutely massive story and world. I mean, too massive for its own good, but definitely pretty interesting. Like music, noise, Shoemaker, How's the Heart, beautiful, angelic, filled with amazing vocals from Flora Jansen, the best of her career. Great riffs, great choral stuff, great orchestral stuff, extremely well balanced and produced. Everything is quite crisp and clear, despite being as inherently objectively over the top and bombastic as it is. And honestly, the orchestral section of this album, All the Works of Nature Which Adorn the World, I really appreciate and respect that as well. Like, it's kind of really cool, actually, to see Nightwish really embrace the symphonic aspect of symphonic metal and just make, like, almost purely orchestral music that is motivated a lot by emotion and by different swelling movements. Like, it's quite tender and beautiful and epic and powerful. Now, I will say that much like The Greatest Show on Earth, this could have been its own standalone release, and in fact, it probably should have, because if it were, suddenly, Human to Nature is 50 minutes long instead of like 81 fucking minutes long. Like, immediately, a lot of the issues that I have with this album's runtime, they're gone, because now it's 2 albums. That's maybe the route they should have taken. Also, the song Harvest, goofy, cheesy, I don't like it, kinda dumb. Didn't like it 4.5 years ago, don't like it now. It sounds like something from a Disney movie, but made into a folk metal song. Not feeling it. I think overall, as a package, there's definitely some editing that could have been done. Again, in my opinion, the fucking entire orchestral part of this album, that could have been a standalone record. There was no need for it to really be here attached to this, in my opinion. But, that said, we're looking at the entire album, not sections of it, and as an entire album, I'm feeling a very enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5, leaning towards a 4. I don't remember what I said in my original review like 4.5 years ago, but I do know that I gave the album a 2.5 out of 5. I was pretty uneducated on power metal and symphonic metal and Nightwish at the time, so I wouldn't really invest much stock now in that review. I've clearly come to really appreciate a lot of Nightwish's stuff, and I'm really happy I did this video also, by the way. Like, it was genuinely really cool to kind of explore this discography, to connect with a lot of this music, to learn about a lot of this music, to explore a lot of this music. And I'm especially happy to report that, in my opinion at least, the post-Tarja Nightwish eras are pretty good. Like, everyone told me, once you get past fucking Once, that's it. Nightwish fucking sucks. And there's definitely some dark moments, like Dark Passion Play, for instance. But honestly, there's plenty of stuff, like with Imaginarium, Endless Forms Most Beautiful, Human to Nature. Even if these albums aren't perfect, I really enjoyed a lot of what was on these albums pretty consistently. So yeah, there you have it. Reviewing every Nightwish album. I went into this not really super pumped for it, but I ended up really enjoying this. I ended up really enjoying talking about these albums. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. What's your favorite Nightwish album? What's your least favorite Nightwish album? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Did I get it somewhere in the middle? It's your turn! Press this button to subscribe. Look, more videos here. Stay tuned for a Yesterwind Nightwish album review, and as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.